Hello there and welcome back to my channel. You know back to school is getting close when you start having nightmares about the first day of school.
Look at it, I'm gonna get nightmares with that face.
Whether you dream about oversleeping, showing up to school in your PJs, or something just going horribly wrong, it can leave your anxiety levels soaring. So in this video, to hopefully ease your worries, I'm gonna share 5 simple but effective tips to help your first day of school run smoothly. Tip number 1 is to set alarms on your phone. If you are going into your first year of teaching, just trust me on this. But if you have taught before, then you know the first day of school is an absolute whirlwind. It flies by in the blink of an eye, but yet also feels a million years long at the same time. I don't know the science behind it, I just know that it's true. But either way, it is helpful to have reminders in place to keep you on track, and that's where alarms come in. At minimum, I recommend setting alarms for when your students will be arriving to school, when it's time to take them to another class like art or music, lunchtime, recess time, and dismissal time. But you might also want to set alarms as warnings that those transitions are coming. So for example, if your students arrive at 8 a.m., you might also set an alarm for 7:45 as a 15-minute warning that your students will be arriving soon. Or you might also want to set alarms during the day for when you plan on transitioning between activities, just so that nothing goes on too long. Now, the level of extremity that you choose to take your alarms is completely up to you. Worst come to worst, you have some annoying alarms going off throughout the day. Personally, I think that's better than forgetting to take my students to lunch, but I'll leave that up to you. Tip number 2 is to plan the day as a timeline. Planning the first week of school is completely different than planning a typical week of school, but specifically the first day is a completely different ballgame. Now, I actually have a video that walks you through how to plan the first week of school in 3 easy steps. So if you are interested, I will have that linked for you in the description box. But when it comes to planning the first day of school especially, I recommend approaching it as a timeline. You want to start by creating the boundaries of your schedule, meaning what time are your students arriving and what time are they being dismissed. From there, you want to fill in those non-flexible times that you don't have control over, such as when is it time to take your students to specials? When do they go to lunch? When do they go to recess? Are there any events happening that day, such as a fire drill or an assembly or a visit from your principal? Then whatever time gaps are remaining can be broken down into 15 to 30-minute increments for various activities. This would include teaching routines and procedures. Maybe there are school-wide conduct lessons you have to teach. You want to get in some of those get-to-know-you activities and some team-building activities as well. Now, when it comes to the first day of school, focus on the necessities. You are not teaching every routine and procedure your students need to know on day 1. You need to teach the most important ones, such as going to the bathroom. I recommend that being one of the first things you teach your students. You know, not how to go to the bathroom, but the procedures for using the bathroom, because I guarantee you there's at least one student sitting in your room on the first day that needs to go to the bathroom but isn't sure what to do. So get that one out of the way early, and then approach it from a strategic standpoint, meaning teach your students the lunch procedures just before you go to lunch, or wait to teach your students small group procedures until you plan on teaching small group, which I guarantee you is not happening on the first day of school. From there, once you have that timeline schedule, you can even create a set of slides that will help guide you through the day so that you stay on track. But again, if you want a more detailed look at this planning process, I recommend checking out the full video, which will be linked for you in the description box. Tip number 3 is to have fill-in activities ready. Since the first day of school can be so hectic and unpredictable, I will give you an example of my very first day of teaching and everything that went wrong later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. It is helpful to have almost like a backup plan or very easy activities that you can pull out at any time if, or rather when your plans go awry, because They will. I think as teachers, we all know it's better to be over-prepared than it is to be under-prepared.
But I always say it's better to be pre-prepared.
But getting ready for the first week of school is crazy enough, and you have so many things on your plate that these fill-in activities should be very simple and low prep. It shouldn't be something that you spend hours creating and then might not even end up using. So here are just a few of my favorites. For team building, I love to do the longest paper chain. Essentially, you break students into groups. Each group gets one piece of paper, a pair of scissors, and a glue stick, and their goal is to create the longest paper chain possible. Typically, I give them the materials, I let them work for a bit, and then they have a chance to see what the other teams are doing. Like, we lay out all of the chains and see the progress, and that usually sparks some ideas, and they will have extra time to make some changes before we do the final test. But what's great is it doesn't require a lot of materials, and you can kind of give them different lengths of time depending on what's going on in your schedule. That's also a great one if suddenly technology stops working, since none of the materials are technology based. If you want to throw in a random game, charades is always great. You can play traditional charades where students just act out movies or TV shows or songs or events, actions, whatever you want it to be. Or you can actually tie it directly into your routines and procedures. So after you have taught a few procedures to your class, you can have them play charades where they take turns acting out the procedures and the other students have to guess, or maybe they have to do something wrong in the procedure and the rest of the students have to try to pinpoint what it is. If you want to get your students up and moving, four corners is a great option. There's a few different ways you can play four corners. You could give students like multiple choice questions and they go to the corners in order to answer. Or you can have your students play four corners where you choose one student to be the leader. They typically stand in the middle of the room. They will close their eyes and the rest of the students choose a corner to go to. Once all the students are in a corner, they have to stay there. The person in the middle will choose a corner. So typically you've designated numbers like corner 1, corner 2, corner 3, and corner 4. If they choose corner 3, all of the students in that corner are out and have to go back to their seats, and you keep going until there's only one student left. And then if you just need some quiet time or your students need quiet time, directed drawings are fantastic. You can pull up videos on YouTube. One of my favorite channels is called Art for Kids Hub. I will link that for you in the description box, but they have great guided videos on how to draw various things. So all students need is a piece of paper and then some kind of a coloring device, crayons, color pencils, y'all know what I mean, but it's nothing that you have to prep in advance. You just put the video on and then it gets nice and calm in your room. Tip number 4 is to be present. During times of stress, which I would classify the first day of school as a time of stress, at least from my personal experience, our minds tend to drift because our brains are trying to analyze the situation and make decisions. Now, this is a survival mechanism, so it serves a purpose and it's a good thing, but on the first day of school and even the first week of school, it can really hinder your ability to start forming relationships with your students. For example, I always felt like a pinball on the first day of school, just bouncing all around, and there were definitely times when I would be speaking with a student and I was hearing what they were saying, but I wasn't really listening. It was kind of going in one ear and out the other. It's almost like when someone introduces themselves to you and they tell you their name and you go, okay, and you walk away and you're like, what was their name? I forgot to listen to what they told me.
I think you seem distracted.
Maybe that's just me, but you definitely want to avoid that happening on the first day and the first week of school when you are trying to get to know your students and allow them to get to know you. Plus, you don't want those wonderful first day of school memories to pass you by. I get it. It's a hectic day that is much easier said than done, and not all of the memories are great ones, as you will hear about a little bit later on, but you want to try to be as present as possible so that you can really soak in everything that's happening. Again, I know that is easier said than done, but here are a few simple tips that you can try. Make sure you are greeting your students at the door as much as possible. I know sometimes a student may come in and needs help with something and you may have to kind of drift away from your door, but as other students start entering, make sure you are acknowledging them, greeting them, making them feel welcome, and leaving that good, positive first impression. The second tip is to participate in the activities with your students. If you're doing a get to know you activity or even a team building exercise, you can jump in with your students and participate as well. If they're doing a brain break, you can do it too. That's gonna allow you to kind of step away from all of the stress and all of the things floating through your brain that you need to get done and really be present in the moment. The third tip is to save the things that can wait. So for example, if your students are doing some kind of a get to know you activity and you're trying to go around and label their supplies, realize that that doesn't have to get done on day one. It's okay if you don't label supplies until later on in the week so that you can really engage in conversations with your students instead of being distracted by doing something else. And then finally, be as prepared as possible. I'm sure that goes without saying, but even simple things can make a big difference, such as laying out any copies that you need in the order you plan on using them throughout the day so that you're not shuffling around your desk trying to find papers, making a set of slides to guide your day so you don't worry about things getting left behind, and setting those alarms, as I mentioned in tip number 1, will really help you feel confident that you will be alerted when it's time to move on and you don't have to constantly check the clock. And that kind of leads us into the 5th and final tip: be proactive. Now, technically, this should have been the first one because you're doing it ahead of time, but I also think it's the most challenging because there are so many ways you can be proactive and it does require planning. So I saved that one for last. Being proactive is all about doing things to make your life easier. Think about it as doing things that your future self will thank you for. Going into the first day of school and knowing that it's going to be overwhelming and exhausting, you can prepare certain things in advance to make it just that much easier for you. So here are a few examples. First of all, make sure you prep your meals in advance. Already know what you're going to have for breakfast and either have it ready to go or have it be something very simple to throw together in the morning. Pack your lunch the night before and think ahead. You want it to be something that probably doesn't need to be heated up or is more like handheld, like a sandwich. That way, if you choose to multitask during your lunchtime, not that you should have to, I said choose to, it's gonna be much easier for you to eat and get things done. And then knowing that you're most likely going to be exhausted at the end of the day, think ahead about dinner. Either have another family member cook or choose to just get takeout that night. Or maybe you're gonna prep something in advance so all you have to do is microwave it. Now, if you're looking for some simple meal ideas, I do have videos for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack ideas for teachers. So those videos will be linked for you in the description box. Similarly, you can have your teacher bag all packed up, ready to go, waiting for you by the door. You can also pick out the clothes you're gonna wear the night before and have them laid out and ready. And you can start adjusting your nighttime routine. If you're like me and you struggle to fall asleep before the first day of school, try to do some things in advance that will help you sleep better. So setting the temperature to be a little bit colder, starting to dim the lights, staying away from technology about an hour or two before bed, avoiding caffeine, all of the things that will help you get a good night's sleep. But again, there are so many different things that you could do to be proactive. Just think about what can I get done in advance to make my life easier later on. Those are my top 5 tips for helping your first day of school run smoothly, but I did want to share one final bonus tip. Find the small wins and celebrate them.
The celebration of Oscar night.
The first day of school rarely goes as planned. I wrote about this in my book, First Class Teaching, but on my very first day of school as a brand new teacher, I had a student throw up on my feet, and then I got lost taking my students to art, all within the first half an hour of the day. Now you may be hearing that wondering, Michelle, Did anything go right your first day? Not a whole lot, but all of my students did make it home safely, and for me, that was a big win. So no matter what happens, try to look for those glimmers on your first day, find them and celebrate them. But I hope that you have the best first day of school. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you do not miss future videos. If you found this one helpful, please share it out with your teacher friends. As always, thank you for watching. I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I will catch you in the next one.